disclosure, but on an international basis, not just the USA, because we had people attending from all over the world, from South America, from Australia, from everywhere. So the public has long sought UFO disclosure from governments worldwide, not just in the United States. And it even goes back even before the Roswell crash or before the Kenneth Arnold sighting over Mount Rainier on June the 24th, 1947. So, since the conference was in Germany, I started with Germany, in the heart of Europe. So actually, after the close of World War II, many of the German rocketeers that worked on the missile programs and so forth, and early pioneers in rocketry, came over to the United States through a Project Paperclip. And this is Dr. Werner von Braun. And when he first came to the U.S., he worked at the Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama, along with his teacher and protege, Hermann Ober, who was an Austrian. And they were working for the United States to help us close the missile gap with the Soviet Union. But in 1958, President Eisenhower shipped these scientists over to the peaceful exploration of outer space when he formed NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration. And Dr. von Braun was put in charge of NASA from 1960 through 1970 and was responsible for the success of all the early Gemini program and the Apollo program, and putting a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth with the Apollo 11 in 1969. And this is Dr. Hermann Ober. He was in Germany. He was von Braun's instructor, teacher. And both of these have made public statements in the newspapers in America in the 1950s to the effect that beings from another solar system had established bases on the planets of our own solar system and were guiding human space research activities. So they said we got help from above. So back in 1936, in the Black Forest region of Germany, outside the city of Freiburg, there was a UFO that crashed in the spring of 1936. So the area was cordoned off by the army, the German army at that time, and then the wreckage was collected where it was taken to laboratories inside Germany to back engineer it and develop alien technology. Well, there was some evidence that the Germans had some success with this. They at least developed one type of craft called a Hannibal, which was a type of flying saucer, and it flew at 1,600 miles per hour. There was only this one prototype, and they flew it in Czechoslovakia on Valentine's Day in 1945. And by that time, it was too late for Germany because the Russians were closing in from the east, and the Allies were closing in from the west. But there is some evidence that the Germans did develop their own UFO type of aircraft from back engineering of this object that crashed in the Black Forest. So in Germany, in the 17th of June, 1950, Oscar Link and his 11-year-old daughter reported a landed UFO that took off from a grove of trees in the heavily forested area of Thuringia. That was in East Germany behind the Iron Curtain. But this might be the first case of a close encounter of the third kind in the modern age of flying saucers, and occupants of the UFO were also sighted at that time. In March of 1952, U.S. Air Force pilots encountered UFOs in the skies over Frankfurt. And this was important because the U.S. Air Force became involved. The U.S. Air Force had half of the Frankfurt airport as a base of operations there. So this is the only cases in Project Blue Book that were outside of the United States and Germany, but because it involved U.S. forces. In June of 1955, there was a big UFO flap over Central Europe. On the 9th of June, over Dusseldorf, a flying saucer with a searchlight beam was scanning the city and the military airfield. And then on the 11th of June in Zurich, Switzerland, just south of the German border, this UFO with a circular light array was seen hovering over the city. Now, the Central Research Network for Extraordinary Celestial Phenomena, or CNAP, is the largest UFO civilian group in Germany, although they work closely with the government in receiving and processing UFO reports. And last year they received 1,348 reports of unidentified flying objects, of which they could explain 90% of them, but the other 10% remain unidentified. And that pretty much corresponds with UFO research in the United States. Project Blue Book was in operation from 1952 through 1969, conducted by the U.S. Air Force out of headquarters in Dayton, Ohio. And they were only they were able to explain 88% of the UFO cases, but they still had 12% that remain unidentified, truly unidentified flying objects. Now we turn to the United States, and so this is an actual film of a UFO engaging its force field and deflecting a U.S. Hellfire missile fired at it in the Gulf of Yemen on the 30th of October 2024. And George Knapp, he's a famous UFO investigator. He's also on the Coast to Coast AM radio program every night, along either him or George Noory. And he's an investigative reporter for KLAS TV in Las Vegas. That's the CBS network affiliate. And he was attending the congressional meetings in September of last year. And he saw this film showed for the first time. And he was so astounded. He said, we don't have anything like that in our technology, and it's got to be extra terrestrial. That's George Knapp right there. Now we turn to Russia, and so throughout the Cold War period, and even before that, going back to 1908. On June 30th of 1908, a mysterious object changed course, and instead of going on to hit the city of Leningrad, it crashed in the forest, or it was in St. Petersburg. It crashed in the forest of the Tunguska region in Siberia. And many Russian scientists have speculated that it was a spacecraft from another planet. And they couldn't salvage their ship, but they didn't want to crash into a populated area. The Russians have also been very fascinated with the planet Venus. Now, so far, there have been 46 space probes sent to Venus by 4 spacefaring nations of Russia, the United States, the European Union, and Japan. The European Union with its Venus Express, and Japan with its Akatsuki probes. But of these 46 space missions to Venus, 29 were from Russia. So what's the big fascination with Venus by the Russians? This is actually more than, this 46 space probes to this one planet is more than to the moon or Mars or any of the outlying planets altogether. So what's the big fascination from Venus? If it's this dead, lifeless planet that they want us to think it is, then why are they spending billions upon billions of dollars and sending all these probes there? Now there's 10 more space probes that are on the books to be launched, and New Zealand is going to join the space race. They're sending a Venus Life Finder mission there. It's going to launch in December with the help of MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. This is Marina Popovich on the right. She is or was the Soviet Union's UFO research director for their official UFO investigation. She was also a Russian cosmonaut and the Russian Air Force's pilot, a colonel in the Russian Air Forces. And this is her friend Omnek Onek, and my friend. She's the ambassador from Venus. She was there with me in Germany, and they were talking about Venus. This was in the UFO Congress in Tucson, Arizona, back in 1993, sponsored by former Air Force Colonel Wendell Stevens. And now we go to China. And so on the left, you see Chinese children learn early about the challenges that future taikonauts, what they call astronauts, or taikonauts, will face in exploring and colonizing the final frontiers of outer space. You see the flying saucer in the upper right-hand corner. I thought that was really interesting. And then on the right, you see myself in the Garden of the Dragon Emperors in northeast China, not far from the North Korean border. So I was in China with Rob Potter from Mount Shasta, talking about UFOs. And while we were there, we investigated the tombs of the Dragon Emperors, who say they got their power from these dragon-like serpentine beings that came down from the sky. You see a statue of one of them, and that's holding an orb. It's some kind of mechanism where they channel energy and power either in a destructive or a creative way. While Rob and I were down there, we got arrested. Yeah, we spent one day in jail in China. They said we were promoting a cult, and then I contacted the United States Embassy, and I said, please help us. And they said, okay, don't say anything. We're going to call them and let them know. So they told them Well, Raymond Keller is the author of these books, yes, but he doesn't represent any organization or any religion. He just represents himself, and he writes these books. So then they let us go, but they still deported us. They put deportation on their passports, and they held us in correctional custody for 1 week until our flights could be rebooked. So, we have a Bill of Rights here in the United States, so it's not a suggestion, but that's our guarantee of. Those are our guarantees, and when we leave the United States, we don't enjoy those same freedoms. So it could be scary when you're detained by foreign authorities. I hope I never have to go through that again. We were staying at a New Age center, and when I started the presentation, 55 armed Chinese police from Qingdao came in and stopped the meeting, and then arrested myself and Rob Potter and another gentleman from Tibet. And they took the Tibetan gentleman upstairs and tied him to a chair. And I don't know what else they did, but that probably would have been our fate if the U.S. Embassy didn't interfere on our behalf. Now we turn to France, and France was the first country outside the United States to establish its own UFO investigative agency. That was in the summer of 1954, when many UFOs were landing and occupants were being sighted all over the country. And the organization they established was called GAIPAN, and a lot has been written about it, especially by Jacques Vallée. He's a computer scientist and expert who, as early as the mid-1960s, began to catalog UFO sightings by the different type of encounters, and then that was later modified by Dr. J. Allen Hynek from Northwestern University, the technical consultant to Project Blue Book, and he's the one who came up with the scale of close encounters of the first through the third kind originally, and since then has been expanded to close encounters from the first to the seventh kind. Then we come to the United Kingdom, and it's a big concern of mine, and I know as some of you being members of a UFO club, you probably heard about all the missing scientists and the UFO investigators that are dying under mysterious circumstances, like the David Wilcox and all these other. Then there was a colonel, Air Force colonel, involved with UFO investigations that just disappeared in Texas. And so in the UK, we had Nick Pope just died this year. He was the former UFO desk investigator at the Ministry of Defense in the MI5. He's the author of several UFO books and also a multimedia personality, and he affirmed the existence of an international UFO cover-up by the governments of the world. So we see from all these different countries that UFOs are being taken seriously by these governments, and now we see that UFO investigators and researchers are just disappearing or dying.
He died of cancer.
Yeah, that's what they say, right? Yeah.
Oh, you don't believe he died of cancer? Oh, that's a whole nother thing, huh?
Yeah, oh, yes, sir. Yes,
I'm
Steve.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. The one lady that was, I don't know if you guys heard about that, they said they found her remains in the last week or two. Supposedly the one lab scientist in one of the deserts out there.
Oh,
Her
wow.
remains were found, supposedly.
With a bullet wound?
I think they might have said something about
A bullet wound? Yeah, with a bullet.
yeah.
Oh.
I mean, that was his story, so.
So maybe being a UFO investigator can be hazardous to your health.
Well, some of those people, like,
They-
one guy was in the military though, was in.
They were working on
General
reverse
Colonel.
engineering spaceship too,
Oh,
and
yeah,
so-
yeah, that's right.
yeah, anti-gravity stuff like that. It was
Yeah,
even more.
that's the subject of,
Plasma.
that's the subject
Yeah.
of this
Yeah.
book. It's all about the 1950s and the G ships and Anti-Gravity Research Foundation and all that. Okay. Okay, then we come to Brazil, and I have a friend that went down and worked with all the UFO clubs there, and I have extensive files from her, and they're in my autobiography. My autobiography is in 4 parts, and it's going to be in part 2. And so these are some people that I worked with in 1972. On the left is Gabriel Green, then that's me in the center, that's my friend Dolores Barrios, and then that's Ruth Norman, or Oriel, Queen of the Archangels. She is the was the director of the Unarius Academy of Science. So we met in 1972, and Dolores Barrios shared a lot of information about her research and her contacts in Brazil. And this is one of the more noted cases at that time, was in the Brazilian Air Force went out to the island of Colares, where all these people were getting burned. It wasn't because the UFOs were being aggressive, but they were getting too close to the UFOs as they landed, and so they received severe radiation burns. So the advice from the U.S. Air Force and other organizations at the time, civilian groups like APRO, that I was a member of, Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, was to maintain a distance, at least until the objects had landed and cooled off, because they're emitting huge doses of lethal radiation. Then we come to Israel, UFO disclosures from Israel. Of course, if we read the Bible, we could see in the past with the Ezekiel's wheel within a wheel, and many examples of what appeared to be UFOs and cherubim, or the occupants that were in the wheel and so forth. But even in the modern times, this is Chaim Ashed. He's an Israeli space expert. Israel is a space power. They launched 20 satellites under his direction, communication satellites and surveillance satellites. But he made public statements to the effect that he knows the United States is in contact with representatives of some kind of galactic confederation or some larger galactic community. Okay, then in India there's a professor there who is really big into the UFO connection with the ancient Vedic scriptures and the Mahabharata and so forth, all the documents from ancient India. And this is J.S. Yajnik of the Banaras Hindu University. In 1972, he said, "The visitors from outer space are not hostile," because he felt if they were, they would have done something to enslave us or obliterate the whole planet by now, but they haven't. And the professor aptly presents the more open-minded view of the East with regard to flying saucers and their crews from other planets and the future prospects for all of humankind, following more extensive contact with our celestial brothers and sisters. Then we come to Mali. Mali is a landlocked country in central West Africa, and you see some of the neighboring countries that it borders on: Mauritania, Senegal, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Algeria. But in the southwest, in the more populated area, are the Bariaga Red Cliffs region. And this is an area of ancient contact with the occupants of UFOs. And they believe that some 5,000 years ago, these aliens arrived from a largely water world called Momo in the Sirius star sector, and they gave a lot of information about Sirius, its invisible companion Sirius B, how many years it takes for it to in its revolution, Sirius B and its revolution around Sirius A, and also about the existence of a Sirius C star. Although it doesn't orbit Sirius, it's very close, and it's in the nature of a brown dwarf, which has only recently been discovered. So how did these people, from 5,000 years ago, get all of this knowledge? And then it was imparted to astronomers in the modern age, and only now is this information that was given so long ago being vindicated and verified.
When did they find out about? Was that the 60s or 70s?
That was in the 70s.
Okay.
And I think it's maybe even was mentioned on some of the episodes of Ancient Aliens.
Yeah, I did see it on there.
Right, that was the one In Search Of too.
Oh,
Way back in the mid '70s.
yeah.
They had a show just on that.
It's amazing,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's like proof positive that we're not alone in the universe. So this is Turkey coming up next, and there were rumors of a crashed UFO around Ankara. It was in all the newspapers, and reports of occupants. And one individual testifying said they communicated with the female seen on the left, and she said they were from a planet called Era that orbits Alcyon, or a star we call Alcyon, which is one of the stars in the Pleiades group. Now the Pleiades are, it's a massive star cluster. There's like 250 stars in the Pleiades, but we can only see 7 of them at best on a clear night. If you just make a 45-degree line directly up from when you find Taurus the bull in the sky, and you draw a line, it'll take it right up to where the Pleiades are. So that's a beautiful star group. When you're out sky watching or just doing stargazing, to look at that one. Okay, next one is Australia, and I lived in Australia for a year. I was working with UFO Research Queensland and helping them with their newsletter. I lived in the North Quay in Brisbane, in the Brisbane area, but I went up the coast of Queensland, almost all the way to Cairns, and then back down a little bit to Townsville. And I had a friend, O'Mayo, who was an Aboriginal, and he gave me this kind of a plant to chew on. It's a patiri, and I don't know if it was a hallucination or if I was really there and bilocated or something. But I went to this planet. It was had a tiny brilliant bluish white star in the sky, and everything was blue, including the inhabitants that were these blue koala bears. And I was up in a tree, and I thought I was like one of these koala bears. and so I think that psychedelics have some, because the shamans believe that these psychedelics, and then in South America you have the ayahuasca, and that these kind of things open doors to other dimensions. And then maybe it's not imagination, maybe our consciousness is really transported to these places. But that was my personal experience with Australians, so that was a big revelation. Oh, I found out that they really have blue koala bears here on Earth. There's a picture of them.
Who would have
Okay.
thought?
Then New Zealand, and New Zealand has always been interesting because the U.S. Navy has its headquarters there for the Operation Deep Freeze for the Antarctic research program. A lot of UFOs seen over Antarctica and also in the North and South Island of New Zealand. And New Zealand has decided to join the space race, and they're sending their first space probe to the planet Venus in December. It's called the Venus Life Finder. It's a photon explorer carrying an atmospheric probe to test for signs of life in the atmosphere of Venus. And then Canada, and I just recently published an article in, I write a weekly column for Lon Strickler's phantomsandmonsters.com. He's out of McSherrystown, and here in Pennsylvania. And I did an article with the help of James Board from Euphoria Chronicles in Sudbury, Ontario. And I'll be up there speaking later in August. But it was the year of 1970 in Canada. That was the year of the UFO. And all throughout Canada, all the provinces of Canada, hundreds of people were reporting UFOs of all different shapes and sizes, and even occupant sightings. So check Lon Strickler's, and you could read that, Phantoms and Monsters. But the search for flying saucers began in Canada back on the 11th of November 1953 with the foundation of Project Magnet. Now, Wilbur B. Smith was a radio technician with the Department of Transportation in Canada, and he was given the responsibility by the Canadian government to set up a monitoring station at Shirley's Bay for strange electromagnetic phenomena and the appearance of flying saucers. Then later on, we have Paul Hellyer. He was the Minister of National Defense in Canada during the Pearson administration from 1963 through 1968. And he said that, much like Haim Eshed from Israel, he said he knew that from interviewing American defense personnel and astronauts and so forth, scientists, he knew that there were at least 80 species of extraterrestrials on the Earth living and working among us, and many of them were at the Area 51 Papoose Lake facility. And he said that of this 80 species, most of them have good intentions toward us, but there's like a small minority that, has questionable intentions of what they're doing here on Earth. Paul Hellyer said some of them look just like us. They could walk by in the street and you wouldn't know. And so that was what inspired me to write this book, this particular book here, The Real Resident Aliens. So on the cover, you see I put ordinary people, a crowd of people crossing the street, and then the aliens are highlighted with like a golden glow. But all the cases in this book are real cases of aliens that were living clandestinely among us. And that inspired me, that TV show called Resident Alien,
Oh, yeah.
and
I saw it.
with Alan Tudyk, and I said, yeah, there are really aliens that live and work among us, and I have to write a book about it. So that one has been very popular. Okay, and then ultimate UFO disclosure, I'm looking at the United Nations, because when UFO disclosure comes from just one nation, it's very suspect, because what are they holding back? And are they holding back technology that could benefit all of humankind? So it has to be an announcement for all of humankind, I believe. And here's a radio telescope and a UFO appearing. And so this is very important, because in 1964 in Armenia, the USSR and all of its republics held an astronomical conference, and they were discussing the protocols that need to be established for extraterrestrial contact. And one of the astronomers by the name of Kardashev came up with a scale, and he said that when the Earth becomes a type 1 civilization, will probably be welcomed into a larger galactic community. So what is in a type 1 civilization? Well, Dr. Kardashev said many civilizations in space never succeeded in reaching a type 1 because they killed themselves off with biological weapons or nuclear weapons, and they never got that far. But a type 1 civilization is one that encompasses a sharing of resources across the planet. They have a planetary energy grid. They speak with a unified voice when it comes to the extraterrestrials, and they've overcome racism and all forms of discrimination and so forth, and they live in peace. All the inhabitants of a type 1 civilization live in peace with one another, and they have an integrated economic system. They operate out of economic policy of abundance rather than scarcity. So rather than fight for crumbs that fall from a master's table, as the Bible says, they just bake more pies for everybody. So until we get around to that kind of thinking and that way of life, the ultimate disclosure of actually being invited to and being a part of a greater galactic community isn't going to take place anytime soon. Right now they kind of look at us like children playing with matches in a dynamite shack, because our spiritual maturity hasn't matched our technological gains. So we're dealing with the vast powers of the universe. We don't really know how to control these things, and we might end up hurting ourselves. So that's the report on the international disclosure. So that's the first part there. Any questions?
Isn't that the function of the G7? Or part of the function
Yeah.
of the G7 is to have a one world government?
Yeah, I would say that there's a lot of organizations on Earth that are trying to get things together. We have, we have many alliances like NATO and CETO, and North Atlantic Treaty Organization, Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, Pan-African Union, Organization of American States, European Union. All these countries are working on trying to lower barriers and bring the world together. I would say that the extraterrestrials are looking for that kind of thing, but on a peaceful basis, not by force or coercion, like in Russia or China, where people are denied their rights and they're just forced to do things. That wouldn't be satisfactory to them, in my opinion. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Well, that goes back to that China, the whole China thing, and you being there in prison. And, how does the Chinese government take a lot of this, do you think? The alien ET thing? What do
Oh, yeah, they're very excited about it. They just recently sent a space probe to the far side of the moon, and when it crossed the Terminator on the side facing us and started transmitting, bouncing off a satellite and relaying images from the back side of the moon, they came there's one photograph that shows like a bunker, some kind of facility there on the back side of the moon. So I do believe that the moon is inhabited, that there's alien bases on the moon.
Was this the Chinese government you're speaking of, or who? Okay.
Yeah, the Chinese government
Yeah, right.
sent the probe there,
Okay.
yes. Hi.
Hello.
And as far as this UN stuff in the US,
I gotta say goodbye, Ross.
obviously the US, it's a huge thing now, these last few years.
Yes.
And as you showed in the beginning, the Air Force or footage and all this. Why don't we have more of an international, everyone speaking out together about like a UN type? Why is that not, why do you feel that's not, it's a US now, like trying to,
Yeah,
You know.
I think it's, they want, the nations are in a race to obtain and monopolize alien technology. And until we can overcome that, I don't see, I see like partial disclosures happening,
Right.
but not the full-blown one.
Yeah.
So that was the first part, and then the second part is looking at what I call soft disclosure, and this is the information that we glean about UFOs that's leaked out either through the government, via media in Hollywood, or through other sources. So movies, TV, music, etc., bringing awareness of UFOs to the consciousness and preparing people for open extraterrestrial contact. So it's incremental at best, but I do believe it's happening. A lot of people don't know that in 1938, when Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater of the Air produced H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds novel from 1898 from 40 years earlier, into a radio broadcast about a UFO that would crash in Rover's Mill, New Jersey, and at least 5 million people up and down the east coast of the U.S. thought we were really being invaded. And it later turns out that the U.S. government contacted the psychology department at Princeton University, and this was all part of a planned study to gauge our reaction to this hypothetical invasion. Then we have comic books, the idea of extraterrestrials coming to Earth and helping us in some ways, like Wonder Woman, Superman, and so forth. Of course, Superman is a strange visitor from another planet, Krypton, who comes to Earth and lives among us. And so getting people used to that idea. Then in 1951, there was the day the Earth stood still. And 1954, Stranger from Venus. Both movies starred Patricia Neal as the love interest of the extraterrestrial Klaatu. And the idea behind this movie is that the ETs are very concerned about our development of nuclear weapons and the possibility of wiping ourselves out, but also creating a hazard for life on other nearby planets, because the radiation would enter the solar wind and be carried to other worlds as well. So probably as long as we were just endangering ourselves, it wouldn't be that big of a thing, but because of the dangers of taking our weapons and aggression into outer space, that was the theme of the movie. And the co-author of some books with George Adamski, Flying Saucers Have Landed, was Desmond Leslie. He was a British royal peerage, and he served as the technical consultant for these movies, The Day the Earth Stood Still, and then Stranger from Venus, which was produced 3 years later in the United Kingdom. Okay, then UFO disclosure, This Island Earth, 1955. This was interesting because previously, so in 1951, we saw the friendly ETs, and we didn't get a glimpse or knowledge that maybe there's hostile ETs out there as well. So in the movie This Island Earth, starring Rex Reason and Faith Devereaux, the ETs are battling each other. This planet Metaluna is fighting with another planet that's dropping bombs on it, and so they try to recruit American scientists to come and help them as their planet is dying out. So we get a portrait of outer space being an area of conflict. So it's much as oh, my mind just went blank. Oh, it's like Paul Hellyer had said, that there's good ETs and there's bad ETs. Unfortunately, the good ETs outnumber the bad ones and seem to be keeping them in check. Then UFO disclosure and Earth versus the Flying Saucers, 1956. The technical consultant on this movie and who gave the design of the saucers and helped a lot with the storyline was retired Marine Corps aviator Major Donald E. Kehoe. And he was the director of the largest civilian UFO group in existence at the time, NICAP, National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. So here we see more of a little bit of insider information creeping into what are supposed to be just fictional science fiction movies. Okay, these is the scenes of, this is from Forbidden Planet and 1956, and then the costumes and everything were recycled for Queen of Outer Space. So my friend Dolores told me that during the 1950s, she and other Hispanic women were recruited to make all these costumes and designs for science fiction movies and for props in science fiction movies and so forth. And I believe that she and some others are really extraterrestrials. So the fact that these appeared in under the direction of Helen Rose and is the costumes department for Forbidden Planet, I think there's a real connection there. Because Dolores showed up at all the interplanetary spacecraft conventions from the beginning in 1954 until she moved to Brazil in 1963. So there's definitely something there. Then the blob of aliens being horrific and terrible. And this is the first movie that my friend Omnek Onek attended, and a science fiction movie. And Omnek Onek's story, this is her. And myself and Tanya Maidenford, who worked on the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, we went out to Omnek's home in the Ozarks, and we interviewed her for this book, and she was telling us about this movie, The Blob, and how, being a Venusian herself, she was terrified that this is how extraterrestrials were being depicted. So it made her squeamish about ever talking about being an extraterrestrial and being from another planet. Because she thought maybe the way they destroyed the blob was they locked it up into a refrigerator. Because the only thing that you could do to kill it was to freeze it. So I said, well, thank God for the Frigidaire company. Okay. Then we had first spaceship on Venus. This was interesting because this was 7 years before Gene Roddenberry and Star Trek, and it had an international crew. It had African, Japanese, it had India, an American, and a German on this first spaceship to Venus. And when they got there, they found out that the Venusians had downloaded their intelligence into these artificial constructs in order to survive the devastation of their planet. They blew up their planet from nuclear war. And this was produced in Poland and East Germany. And this is the first science fiction movie that I ever saw at the movie theater. And I really liked it a lot. Then The Galaxy Being on television, 1963. The Outer Limits was a superior kind of science fiction program that really made you think, and it put extraterrestrials in a new light. In this case, rather than a monstrous being bent on destruction, it's a being that's curious, a researcher from an electromagnetic universe, whose habitat was situated in the Andromeda galaxy, and the being is captured in the cosmic background radiation and then fine-tuned, and then it breaks out of, because it's an ultra-dimensional being, it breaks out of the TV set that was built by this engineer at a radio station. But it's just an awesome program. It was on the 16th of September, 1963, that it first aired, the first episode of The Outer Limits. And you could probably watch it on, maybe on YouTube or,
Oh, yeah.
and it's well worth it. And then UFO Disclosure and Easy Rider. So here you see Jack Nicholson and Peter Fonda. And Jack Nicholson is puffing on a marijuana joint, but talking about the Venusians and other extraterrestrials that he read about in a book, which sounded, the way he was describing it sounded like George Adamski's Flying Saucers Have Landed. And it's very, very interesting. Gives you an idea of what people were thinking about UFOs back in the day. Then The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1976. This is an ET that gets stranded on Earth and has to somehow survive on our planet. He has to make a living. So he starts selling inventions. And it's kind of like an updated version of Nikola Tesla. A lot of people say Nikola Tesla was an ET. And that's what Margaret Storm wrote about in her book called Return of the Dove. It's an excellent biography of Nikola Tesla. And this is also an excellent movie, too. And then Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Someone banging? Oh, poor
Somebody's
Chris.
knocking.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind in
I don't know.
1977. The technical consultants that were the computer specialist Jacques Vallée and Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was the technical consultant to UFOs to the Air Force on loan from Northwestern University in Chicago for 22 years. And so you know that a lot of the stuff in this movie probably really happened. There's an exchange of personnel with American astronauts going up, and then they're returning people that were taken or hijacked from the Earth from long ago, and there's allegedly such a program. It was called Project Serpo that really happened, and the descriptions of the UFOs, the mothership, and everything is just so right on to actual UFO files that it's I mean, the movie speaks for itself. Really.
I think that laid everything out up until that point in time. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
right.
the whole gamut of the 50s. You know what I mean?
That was it for that time.
Yeah,
that was the
it was
ultimate.
really good. It was,
the ultimate UFO disclosure to be
I've
to
probably watched
be
it a
sure.
dozen times.
So this is a kind of soft disclosure that's been taking place in Hollywood, continuing to the present time. Here we have Starman in 1984. Now this is very interesting because we're introduced to the possibility that non-anthropomorphic or non-human type of aliens would come to Earth, and the only reason that they could they would have to blend into our society, so they would have to assume a human form. And so this is an actual case of an extraterrestrial in its light being. This is Howard Menger, who identified himself as Soldinaro from the Saturnian system. He was a teacher, an avatar sent to Earth, and then his wife Connie Baxter, or Marla, was identify herself as a Venusian, and this is from my files here. He and she are turning into a light being in front of 40 people. Lee Munsick's Flying Saucer Club in Morristown, New Jersey, came down in July of 1958 to attend Flying Saucer meeting at Howard Menger's Apple Orchard in High Bridge, New Jersey, and that's where this took place. I'll be speaking at on July 12th, invited by the High Bridge City Historical Commission to come there and present information from my files about Howard and Connie. So if you want to come there, it's not too far from here. It's just on the other side of the PA border. So here's another picture on the right of Howard and Connie manifesting a light body, twin soul light body, and then Howard was explaining at Lee Munsick's Flying Saucer Club that some of the beings that are non-human, that are from these higher dimensions and from the outer planets particularly, that they don't even need spaceships. They can become their own spaceship. And this is a photograph in Pennsylvania's Blue Mountains, bordering New Jersey, the eastern part of the state, that Howard took, and then Howard told Connie not to let them out, but she ended up releasing them anyway, and they appeared in the August 1958 issue of Amazing Stories, Science, Fact, and Fiction magazine, and I have an original copy of that. And then we have the 1997, we move up to the notorious MIB, Men in Black. The Men in Black actually originated from a gentleman in Connecticut, Albert K. Bender, who was a member of one of the early UFO clubs called the International Flying Saucer Bureau. And he reported his encounters with these gentlemen to Gray Barker, the publisher of Saucer News in Clarksburg, West Virginia. And then Gray wrote a book about it called Flying Saucers and the Three Men. So if you want to know the real origin of the Men in Black, check out that book. So now we come to 2026, and on the 12th of this month will be the movie Disclosure Day, so I'm very excited to see that and find out what else we're going to incrementally know about the UFO presence on Earth. So that concludes the second part. Any question?